Hello everyone. Today I have come up with a short video where we will be discussing that how you can land a job at the end of your college session. Basically, we get into a college, we learn everything, but at the end of the 4 years it seems that it's not possible for me to get a job because we don't have the idea like what are the concepts that we need to skill on to get a job at the end of your college. So today I'll be telling you some basic thoughts, some basic ideas. Basically, working on that, you can get a job at the end of the 4 years. If you will just keep on brushing on those skill sets, that will only help you land a job at the end of the 4 years. So let's not stretch it much and go to the exact point what I wanted to say and what for I have come up with this video. So the first point that you need to understand, that is syntax learning. Okay, so first thing is syntax learning. That is syntax of any 2-3 languages you'll have to learn, that is C, C++ or Java or Python. If the syntax is known to you, then it will be very easy for you to understand the things. If it will be very easy for you to implement at least the things. Like for an example, you know the syntax of for loop of Java and Python. Okay, now if some looping thing is given to you, that there is a list of numbers and you need to find this number from that, at least you can think that you have a list of numbers and you want to find a number from that, and you know the syntax of both the languages, then at least you can think conceptually that yes, this can be done. If you don't have the idea of the syntax of both the languages or any one of the languages, you will not be able to think, because syntax is the basically like language of that particular programming language. Like when you speak a particular language, you should know the wordings of that particular language. So syntax is basically the wordings of that particular programming language. So you will have to have the knowledge of that particular syntax of that particular language. That is one thing. So for learning syntax, you can just simply practice on easy questions of that particular. You can use Java T-Point for learning that, and there are multiple websites. At the end of this video, I'll tell you where to go through. Now the second point is basic control flow. Now what is the basic control flow? Basic control flow is like where the control will go after this particular lining. Like if you have written a code of 10 lines, suppose if you have written a code of 10 lines, then after first line where the control has to go, it's not always like the control will go to your second line only. It can happen that you have written an if else block, and in that if else block, the first line is if, the third line is, or the fourth line is else. The first line is evaluated in the if else block, and once the if block fails to give you the positive response, that control will go to the else block. That is, the control is directly going from the first line to the first line of the code to the fourth line of the code. So you'll have to understand that how this basic control flow is going, where this basic control flow is going, that understanding is very much required. Now the third point is very important, and many of the freshers do not have the idea about this. What is dry run? Dry run is like you understand the control flow. If you understand the control flow, you should first evaluate it on pen and paper, that this should be my output based on this code that I have written. Basically we don't do that. Basically we write the code and we try to get the output from the laptop or the computer or from the IDE that we are using. Okay, but we should always go across, we should always use pen, paper to understand the control flow, to understand the flow of the program, and then try to understand the output. Then try to find the output manually first, and then you are writing the code. Wherever you're writing IDE or anywhere you're writing the code, definitely you'll get an output. Maybe it is erroneous or something, but definitely you'll get an output. But first try with the dry run. Now what is dry run? When you're writing a code, like for example you have written a for loop. Now after that for loop, what should be the output of that for loop? Manually evaluating that with the help of pen and paper, whatever the code that you have written, understanding the control flow and everything, and then finding out the output or evaluating the output is only the dry run. And then when you get the output from the computer or IDE, you'll have to match it with that, and if that's correct, then that dry run, what you have done is right. Okay, so dry run is very important. If you understand the dry run, if you understand, if you are able to evaluate your answers, or if you evaluate your output based on the dry run, that means you have the knowledge of the control flow of the programming. So this is very important. This is very important. If you learn the syntax, so the first flow will be syntax, then you'll have to understand the control flow, and then you'll have to evaluate your answers based on the dry run with the help of pen and paper. Okay. Then the fourth point that according to me should be included in the tips for freshers to land a job, that is basic programs. That is the program of palindrome number, program of finding a prime number, odd number, even number, program of finding a leap year, because they all include the looping concepts that will enhance your understanding of the control flow and the dry run also. Then a list is given from where you'll have to find a particular number, particular digit, or particular like number you'll have to find from there. So there also the looping concepts will be required. Some kind of equality concepts will also be required, that you'll have to equate accordingly. So these things are very important. You will understand the for loop. If you'll understand for loop, while loop, if else, if you'll understand the looping concepts. So these are very important. So basic programs, basically those programs which should have the looping concepts. Basically, I'm not talking about those print and all, only just printing a number or printing two numbers, adding two numbers. No, just they will not help you out. You'll have to understand the control flow. To understand the control flow, you will have to have the knowledge of the for each loop, for loop, if else loop, while loop. So these are very important. So I would suggest go through some basic programs wherein you have the understanding, wherein you can get the basic understanding of the control flow, and you can dry run that and find out the output from that. So that will help you. Then of course you should go through some of the pattern printing programs. They'll give you the like ultimate understanding of the control flow, because they pattern printing programs, in pattern printing programs you will have to implement the for loop, if else loop, while loop. So these loops will together come into the pattern printing program. So if you are going through the pattern printing program now, that will give you a solid knowledge of your control flow, for loop, if else, while, everything. So that is very good. If you are like practicing 2 pattern programs or 3 pattern programs per day, if you are able to understand the x axis, y axis, and how to deal with that x axis, y axis in terms of programming, if I say, that will be I and j. So if you are taking x axis as I and y axis as j, and then you are just working on that, if you are working on the according to the number of the stars that you'll have to print in the I axis, if the number of the stars that you are required to print in the y axis. So that will basically give you a fine idea, very clean idea about the for loop and how the control flow is moving across the entire program. And then with the help of the dry run, every line of the code that you have written, you'll have to evaluate that yes, I've written this line, and based on this line, this particular star is getting printed. If it is not getting printed based on this particular line of code, if you are like in the dry run only, you are able to understand slowly, definitely you'll understand that what errors you have created or you have made while dry run, you are performing the dry run on the program. You will definitely be able to understand. So that will make your concept very easy, because it happens in the when you're writing the code in the interviews, you don't have the chance to run that code, execute that code, find out the error, and if there is an error in that code, no, you will not be given multiple chances. So if you have the idea of the dry run, you will definitely from there you will be able to understand that what errors I have made, and based on that what output I should have got, what is my desired output. So based on that you can compare, and then you can make some changes. Like for the loop, if you are writing, many a times it happens that we start the for loop from 0 or 1, and there we require the for loop to start from 2, so that you can understand from the dry run. Okay, so according to me, these are the basics. I'm not talking about the advanced, because if you go on for advanced level, it will be data structures, it will be like algorithms you'll have to understand, and that is like a very heavy task. But before that, if you want to make a ground for all this, to land a job after your 4 years of completion of BTech or BCA, or any of the degrees that you are doing related to computers and want to get a job in IT, you should have this basic understanding of syntax of any of the languages, like whether it is C, C++, Java, Python. Then you should understand the control flow. That's very vital. Then you should go for understanding the dry run. What is dry run? Then you should go for basic programs like palindrome number, Armstrong number, Fibonacci series, then leap year, then even odd, then printing few of the numbers with interval of 2, printing few of the numbers which are multiples of 5, only the multiples of 5 within a range of like 1 to 50. These are the ways you can understand the control flow for the for loop, while loop, if else. They are very important. Then you will have to go with the pattern printing. They are very important. Pattern printing will give you a very good idea. Now along with this, if you have like knowledge of all these things, then you can go with the break statement, then you can go with the continue statement. Like you'll have to find that how break statement is implemented in Python, then how can I implement the same thing in Java also, or C also. How can I stop, how can I, because iterative, that is if else block, or for loop or while loop is iterative. Iterative means again and again it keeps on continuing, like it keeps on going on executing the same lines of code. So you'll have to stop it at some place. It's not like it should not go into the infinite loop, so you'll have to stop it at some point. So that is very important. Okay, so that is called the break statement or continue statement. You'll have to stop it at some point. So these understandings will come if you keep on practicing. So I'll end up this video here itself. Keep practicing, keep learning, and if you have any query, please put on into the comments. We will try to resolve that. Thank you.